Hey there guys, Farmman Official here and welcome to this Age of Empires 4 video, and today we're going to recap some of the things that were revealed and that I learned about in the recent show match between the Abbasid Dynasty and the Mongols. The show match was released by the developers of the game and amazingly casted by Zach Robinson, also known as Zero Empires, and Eric Roble. In this video we're going to cover 4 different sections. We'll start off by looking at some general points specific to the Abbasid Dynasty, and then we'll take a look at the Mongols. So, let's get straight into the general points that we picked up on. First of all, we're going to take a look at rams. As you'd expect, they're pretty resistant to ranged attack, for example from archers. Because of this, they can be really useful in protecting your infantry by garrisoning them in your rams. You can garrison up to 16 units in a single ram. The ram has 15 armor versus ranged units, and so they can really help to get your infantry away from ranged attack units. Next up, we got to see some stonewalling and some stone wall towers. They are heavy defensive towers that fires are springled. It of course must be built on a stone wall segment, and infantry can use these towers to access the top of the walls. Because of the high damage springled, it can really help in protecting your walls from being breached. We can see from its stats that they have a good 61 ranged attack and 50 against ships. We also see the wall defense for units, where standing on walls reduces damage taken from ranged and siege attack by 66%, and it increases range by 2 tiles. The next thing that I wanted to briefly touch on was the game mechanic of burning buildings. Different of course from Age of Empires 2, where a building on fire doesn't actually lose any further health. In Age of Empires 4, we also found that burning damage begins to accumulate when a building health is down to 25%. Incidentally, this is also when the Mongols receive their bonus resources of 50 food and 50 gold for every building that they cause to burn. With regards to trading, just in Age of Empires 2, the further you trade, and the longer the distance between markets, the more resources you accumulate from that trade. So these were the key general points that I found in this show match, but now let's have a look at the Abbasid Dynasty. The House of Wisdom is the central focal point for this civilization. The Abbasid Dynasty do not have to build a landmark to advance to the next age. Rather, it is the House of Wisdom that acts as the landmark for the civilization, in which you will need to build wings to advance to the next age. There are 4 wings to choose from: economic, military, culture, and trade. When a wing has been completed, the building itself is upgraded and unlocks technologies associated with that wing. As you build around the House of Wisdom, you progress through the levels of the Golden Age, which unlocks certain bonuses. We see that building 10 structures unlocks Tier 1 of the Golden Age, where villager gathering rates are increased by 10% for all resources. Building 30 structures unlocks Tier 2, where the villager gathering rate is increased to 15% for all resources, and research speeds are increased to 15%. Building 60 structures unlocks Tier 3 of the Golden Age, where the villager gathering rate is increased to 20% for all resources. Research speeds is increased to 20% faster, and production speeds are increased by 20% as well. Now this is just a brief overview of the House of Wisdom, and I do have a more in-depth detailed guide about the House of Wisdom coming up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, and you get a little pop-up when that video is released. Now the next thing that we found some information about is the Camel Archer, which is one of the unique units for the Abbasid Dynasty, and it has a special camel unease bonus, whereby camels cause horse cavalry units to deal 20% less damage. They also do bonus damage against spearmen. Taking a look at some of the statistics, they have 175 health, they have 1 armor versus ranged units, they have an 11 ranged base attack, as well as an extra 20 attack against light melee infantry. Also unique to the Abbasid Dynasty, they have the ability to toggle trade resource types, whereby they can toggle a secondary resource for all trade carts or ships to return with, in addition to gold. But in order to be able to do this, they need the Grand Bazaar, which is something they can get from the House of Wisdom by researching the trade wing. Speaking of wings, you might have noticed that they have 4 wings to choose from, but they only age up 3 times. So, bearing that in mind, you can consider the Abbasid Dynasty to have access to another 4th age up, to a pseudo 5th age perhaps, by being able to research that extra wing. A couple of other things that were mentioned about the Abbasid Dynasty that were pretty strong is that they can build rams even in the Dark Age. We could see some crazy strategies with that, I'm sure. Also, they can research faith, which means that their monks do not need a relic to convert enemies. Rather, they can convert enemy units specifically. Also, we saw the medical centers tech in action, whereby we saw units around the keep regenerating health. So that completes the Abbasid Dynasty section of this video. Now I will, as with other civilizations, go into a much more deeper dive into the civilization and the tech trees and basically units for them. Do check out the rest of the channel for those guys, but now we're going to check out what we learned from this show match about the Mongols. So, the Mongols are probably one of the most asymmetric civs in Age of Empires 4, and right off the bat, we find out about their Ovoo, which is a specific building to the Mongol civilization, and it must be built on a stone outcropping. It is able to collect stone over time and also houses unique Mongol technologies, for example, whistling arrows, which increases the Khan's signal arrow duration by 7 seconds and range by 3 tiles. If it has already been researched, it increases the signal arrow duration by 2 seconds and range by 1 tile. The Mongols cannot obtain stone in any other way, they cannot mine it, and they cannot trade for it or be sent stone by allied teammates unless they research a specific technology, I believe. Now, the buildings within the influence of the Ovoo can also spend stone on improved production. In particular, you can produce 2 units instead of 1. So for this, you spend the resources cost for 1 unit and spend some additional stone and can add an extra unit to the production. This includes villages. Around the Ovoo, research has an improved effect, and pastures produce sheep faster. Speaking of sheep, Mongols do not actually get farms, rather they have pastures that produce sheep over time. Also, if you place these pastures under the influence of Ovoos, as described earlier, they'll produce the sheep faster. Next, we learnt about the Khan, which is a unit specific to the Mongol civilization. It acts as a scout at the start of the game, and it has arrows at its disposal. These include a maneuver arrow, which is a fire signal that increases the movement speed of nearby units, including the Khan, by 0.5 tiles for 5 seconds, but it doesn't affect villagers. There is also the attack speed arrow, which fires a signal that increases the reload speed of nearby ranged units, including the Khan, by 50% for 5 seconds. The defense arrow fires a signal that increases the armor of nearby units, including the Khan, by 3 for 5 seconds. There is a scouting falcon that releases a falcon to provide vision in the area for 30 seconds. It's also worth noting that the Khan does respawn when it dies, because often the Khan will be a target for your enemies. We also saw one of the landmarks called the steppe redoubt, and it acts as a gur. Gold dropped off at this landmark increases by 50%. And really interestingly, this is the first time I've come across this, but the Mongols don't use the clockwork trebuchet. Rather, they use a traction trebuchet, which is a bit faster and cheaper, but with a shorter range. I found this attention to detail really quite nice in Age of Empires 4, with 2 different types of trebuchets. We also found that the Mongols of course get 50 food and 50 gold for every building that they burn, which is a really good bonus for raiding. Mongols also cannot build walls, so if you're looking for a defensive style of gameplay, the Mongols is probably not for you. In addition, we found that the Mongols on water have a technology called piracy, which gives them resources for destroying enemy ships. Their outposts, unlike a lot of other buildings, cannot be moved for the Mongols, but they are cheaper with 70 wood instead of 100. So I hope you enjoyed this video. There was a lot covered in this show match, and it was great to see the Mongols in particular in action. Now, something I would really like to read about from you guys is which civilization are you most looking forward to playing as in Age of Empires 4? Do let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you're interested in dedicated civilization guide videos, click the left end card screen now to take you to that playlist, or if build orders are what you're after, click on the right end card screen now. Take care guys, and see you next time.